Hello, I'm Cheryl McCarthy of the City University of New York. Welcome to One to One. Judith Jones has lived a life steeped in books. In her more than 50 years as a book editor, she shepherded the work of some of the century's best-known authors into print. From rescuing The Diary of Anne Frank from the slush pile in 1950 to working on translations of Albert Camus and Jean-Paul Sartre, she went on to work with such distinguished authors as Elizabeth Bowen, John Updike, John Hersey, William Maxwell, and Ann Tyler. She also edited Julia Child's first cookbook, became Child's editor from then on, and championed the work of some of the finest culinary artists. She and her late husband, Evan Jones, collaborated on 3 books. She's written 2 of her own, and now this connoisseur of good food has written a memoir/cookbook with a 4-legged twist. Love Me, Feed Me, Sharing with Your Dog the Everyday Good Food You Cook and Enjoy, has just been published by Alfred A. Knopf. Welcome.
It's lovely to be here.
So this is basically a guide to cooking dishes that both you and your dog can enjoy. What gave you the idea for that?
Well, we got this little puppy when he was so tiny that he just had little, he couldn't break the biscuit, the hard stuff. And I would actually break him with my fingers and help feed him. And I finally said to the local vet up and from a wonderful woman, I said, well, what would you think if I were to just take over and feed him what I eat? And she said, you couldn't do anything better. Now that evidently causes quite a dispute among the experts. The vets are all very conservative. They think it's safer that the dog food industry knows what they're doing. And I don't know whether you saw this, but about 3 months ago in the New York Times, big picture of a little white Havanese, just like this one. And he'd been killed eating a treat that was made in China.
Ah.
And I think people sort of began to think, well, why shouldn't I take care of my little dog the way I take care of my children?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's certainly what the message that went off in my head.
Okay, and your dog is named Mabon.
Yeah.
And he's featured prominently throughout the book. Is he the first dog that you ever cooked for?
No, I have there's a sidebar called Everybody Wanted More Stories, More Stories. And it's called the Dogs That I've Known.
Okay.
And there are quite a few over the years.
But people do say, as you pointed out, that you should not feed dogs what we eat, that you should stick to the canned dog food or the dry dog food.
Well, it's safer,
Mm-hmm.
but they're missing a lot. I mean, my little fellow eats carrots. He likes broccoli, so they're George Bush. And but he doesn't like kale, and I'm with him on all 3. You can see what he likes and dislikes by how he reacts, and it's wonderful. He actually took the kale out of his supper plate and put it on the kitchen floor, 3 gobs of it, and walked away.
Which is what a lot of children would probably like to do with their spinach. So what are the basic ingredients for a healthy diet for a dog?
Well, it's a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 proposition. 1/3 the meats, chicken, fish. That's perhaps he gets more of that than any, but I put that as 1/3. Then 1/3 starches, and maybe if he's getting a little round in the tummy, you cut
Fewer
down
starches, right?
on those starches, and then the vegetables. And what I did to broaden his vegetable appetite was to roast a number of them, because if you've roasted vegetables, they are so wonderful. Things like turnips and parsnips, the sweetness comes to the surface. Mm-hmm. And he loved all these vegetables. So I make a tray full on Sunday or something like that.
And you have some, and he'll have some.
Yeah. We don't sit down together. I mean, he doesn't put in his bib and sit in my husband's chair.
And you don't even eat at the same time.
No. I thought that made the most sense. Because
Why?
you see, very often he's getting something that I've done the night before.
Mm-hmm. I
And
see.
Also, I think it's to make him wait all day until 5 or 6 o'clock when I worked. I had to, but I can pick any time to feed him.
Mm-hmm.
now.
And he eats, what, twice a day?
He gets a little bit of kibble, but or a few quite good treats that have been sampled first. Just a handful for breakfast, and then he eats about 4 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, it's no surprise that, you feed him meat. I mean, one would think dogs would like meat. But I was surprised to hear you say that fish, especially strong-smelling fish, is a big favorite.
They like it, yep, yep. One of our dogs ages ago was really close to death with distemper, and he wouldn't eat anything, and finally what awakened his appetite were sardines.
Uh-huh.
And this local vet up in Vermont said, he's not responding, but try a smelly fish.
And it worked.
And it worked.
Okay. But pasta and rice, that surprised me.
Mm-hmm. Well, he has to have some starches. I mean, that was the formula that this doc in Vermont gave me, that 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And so he gets a lot. I didn't try to be an analyst or a nutritionist because I'm just his loving mistress.
Mm-hmm.
And so I read a lot of things, and one of them talked about, it was a big headline saying, hurrah, after 4,000 years, now they admit that garlic is good for little dogs.
Is it?
Yes.
And why is that?
But you'll get other people saying that,
say no.
oh, that's nonsense, yeah.
So dogs who are, like the overwhelming number of dogs in this country, I'm sure, who are existing primarily on a diet of dog food, do you think they're really missing out?
Well, I know they're missing part of the fun. That's what I want to get across. And that's what I want to get across in this book, that you look in the fridge and there's a little bit of this left over and a little bit of that. And then I remember from childhood a dish that we would make with cooked meat and a crust of wonderful mashed potatoes. And suddenly I was doing creative things instead of just following somebody's recipe. And I think, I probably people would argue with me, but I think they like the variety.
Mm-hmm. Now, dogs seem to be, you go to somebody's house, they have a dog, you're sitting around the table, and the dog is constantly trolling for food, hoping that somebody's gonna feed him or something's gonna fall down. Is it wrong to feed a dog?
Well, it's
From the table?
the right and wrong is you and that particular dog. I mean, I had a list of do's and don'ts, and one of my emphatic don'ts was don't feed him at the table unless you're gonna, then you have to keep it up because they are persistent. Once they get that signal, they'll sit and
Right.
badger.
Right, right.
And I think my guests don't like that very much. I don't like it.
What are some other don'ts?
Some other don't.
You hear about chocolate being bad for dogs. Is that true or is that a myth?
Well, I have to admit that 3 times he got into the chocolate and it didn't affect him at all. However, he got into the, what do you call it? It's a little cardboard box and you attract the mice and then they drop dead.
Oh.
And a lot of people up in our part of Vermont close their houses for the winter, so they put these little traps all over the place.
And they have cheese in them sometimes, or
whatever
peanut
you
butter?
put.
Right,
You
right.
can have steak, you can have cheese.
Okay.
You can have, but they're very potent. And we were sitting with my cousin who just lives down the road, and she had just graduated from vet school, and she heard this crunching. And she said, "Where's Mabon?" And sure enough, he was upstairs, and they had been laid out in the bathroom floor, and he was crunching his last.
But
So Well,
He didn't get hurt.
Well, if she hadn't been there, I'm not so sure he would have gotten to it. She picked up a bottle of what is it? I started to say thyroid, but very, very strong, and she poured it right onto his throat, and it came right back.
Okay.
And then she gave him some pills and a shot. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's a word to the wise.
Yes.
Now, some of the food that some of the dishes, I mean, it's a book full of recipes, and some of them just seem like really haute cuisine. Tell me about a couple of the dishes that you make for yourself and Mabon.
Well, what I do a lot is, I say that we've been raising some grass-fed beef with my cousin who's a farmer up there. And so I have quite a lot of beef. And I'll do a meat dish that is either roasting or making sort of like scallopini and frying and mixing with a vegetable. I try to mix vegetables and things with the meat. And I found, as I sort of said before, that I was inspired by things I remembered from childhood, because that's the way we used to cook. You might have a little roast or a brisket. Well, no, that was too fancy.
But everything's in the one pot.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
But then you had half of it left over, and you made this mashed potato pie or beans. I play a lot with beans and various, dried cereals and mix them with the good stuff. And it's exciting because I haven't had that food. Everything has been much more the fancy French and everything to a T.
And everything's separate on the plate.
Yeah.
But some of the recipes: roast beef shoulder with broccoli rabe, grits with shrimp. I bet the Southern dogs would like that a lot.
Yeah.
Monkfish with summer vegetables, broiled haddock, bluefish, or mackerel over a bed of fennel and potatoes, chicken breast with winter squash, fennel, and hazelnuts.
See, those vegetables all get in and snuggle next to the meat, which is what they want.
Right. Pasta with liver, mushrooms, and cherry tomatoes. All I have to say is, what time is dinner?
Well, all the pasta dishes follow Lydia Bastianich's principle that you can make a good home pasta while the water boils.
Okay.
So it takes no longer than that.
Then for the water.
If you've got the goods in your fridge.
Okay.
And my fridge is always bursting.
Okay, I'll remember that. We're going to take a short break. Then we'll be back with more with Judith Jones right after this message. Welcome back to One to One. I'm Cheryl McCarthy of the City University of New York, and I'm talking with Judith Jones, author of Love Me, Feed Me, Sharing with Your Dog the Everyday Good Food You Cook and Enjoy, which has just been published by Alfred A. Knopf. Is it more economical feeding Mabon the same and buying for him the same kind of foods that you eat yourself? Is that more economical than, say, buying those huge bags of dog food, or is it more expensive?
I think it's more economical in the long run. You don't waste. You've made something nice yourself, and the little dog seems to like it, and put it on a plate, and there's a sort of pleasure and satisfaction that comes at the end of the day for me, I could no more eat just a bag of peanuts for dinner than
You have a dog. Does that prompt you to cook more than you would cook for yourself if you lived alone?
Well, he did prompt me because I wanted to experiment with what vegetables he liked and didn't like and how to make them tasty. So it's more than just the usual recipe, ingredients, this, directions. And for some people, that may be a little intimidating, not to have their hand held. But I'm trying to free people more and get them to really enjoy cooking.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the great pleasures to me and to the children that have been a part of my life. And I think we're missing something if just the smell of the kitchen and the memory. I don't know whether you've ever had the experience of eating something that you hadn't tasted for years, and you just want to cry it.
Mm-hmm.
So it calls up memories in the past, nothing really tangible. But, and to have, when, and many people do live alone today more than ever, but just having a little creature who's sniffing around, and as I say in the book, I speak French to him sometimes, and he loves that because, you know, it's so lilting. Oh, mon petit chien, tu veux faire une petite promenade? Uh-huh.
Now you talk about using chicken soup as part of what you serve, Mabon. How does that work?
Oh, I know, my scrap soup. This is the old adage of, you know, use everything and don't waste. Waste not.
Want not. Waste not, want not.
Want not.
Just throw it in a pot and make soup out. Throw it all in a pot and make soup out of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And you literally, we all have freezers, and you can just keep putting the skins of onions and this and that just into a plastic bag, throw it in the freezer. And then when you want, on a cold night, a good warm vegetable soup, throw it all together, taste it, see what it needs. This is where it's fun. And it's too watery, and so you think of things you might have that would go in, some little mushroom stems and this and that. And suddenly you've just made a big pot of delicious soup.
And does Mabon like soup too?
Yes.
Laps it right up?
Yes, dogs like the lapping motion.
Uh-huh.
And they like their food wet. I'm glad you asked that question, because I don't think
Yeah, I never thought animals would much like that dry dog food. I thought that would get old pretty quickly.
Yeah, he does sometimes still turn it down, but he happens to be, I'll tell you the downside, he is just a monster when it comes to food. He loves it so. And he'll watch me, and if I walk away from that kitchen table and the cheese is over there, forget it, it's gone.
It's over. Now, you see all of those beautifully groomed dogs in the Westminster Dog Show, the shining coats and very healthy. Do their owners cook for them? Do you think they eat cooked food as well?
I don't think many people do. I think they do maybe a half and half proposition. And, you know, those people don't care what they spend. And then so they have walkers and they have groomers and you name it. Have
you learned to like, well, I think you said that you have learned to like certain foods or experiment with certain foods as a result of cooking, figuring out what Mabon likes to eat. Is there something that you've learned to like as a result of cooking for him?
Well, I will think, oh, I must use up that fish has been there a couple of days. I must use it up, and so that it's a back and forth. But it's for me too. We think pretty much alike, except I'm not a thief.
Is there anything?
I know of. Is
there anything you prepare for yourself that you don't share with him?
Well, I was scared of garlic. When I would have made that broth, I would have not put the garlic cloves in because it had such a bad rap. And then somebody, just in time before we went to print, had found out all the positive effect of garlic and how good it is for you.
Okay. I said earlier you've edited a lot of cookbook authors. Does your love of cooking predate your becoming an editor of cookbooks?
Well, you know, I think with editing, I couldn't have predicted. I was very disappointed at the state of the food world in America when I came back from France. You couldn't, a shallot was unheard of. Garlic came in little boxes. Did you ever see those?
I don't think so.
I think it was so they wouldn't smell up the adjoining vegetables.
Uh-huh.
And my mother was so English, she would say, well, Judith, what do you expect? And they have to be wrapped in something. I think it was coincidence. I might have done it with something else, but because I discovered food in France, the love of it, and I shouldn't just say I, because Evan did too, my husband. We loved making things together. We had almost no money, but the dollar was good in those days. And we'd just come home with things we'd bought off a wagon and go down to the cellar where the man had a big jug of just daily wine, so we'd fill our little pitcher and have that with our dinner. And I don't know, it was a way of life.
Is there a particular, I mean, a cookbook is different from fiction or, nonfiction.
Yeah.
Is there an art to, is it a special art to editing a cookbook?
I think it's I think I demand more of myself, because so often the person who's a very good cook can't really articulate it. And so I would get both the illustrator, and I would always be there when we started the final writing, so that you ask yourself, to go back to that word curdle, what does curdle mean? And yet these cookbooks, they didn't tell you, they didn't teach you. It's as though, I think they were just sort of borrowed recipes and put down in haphazard fashion. And so it was fun when I read this huge tome, Mastering the Art of French Cooking. It wasn't finished, but it was about over 1,000 pages. And everything was so beautifully explained, why you did it, what you were looking for. And
is it because she was able to articulate it so well, or was this a result of your editing, or both?
No, she had the gift. But
okay.
I learned a lot from, how she went about it.
Right.
And I remember once when she was doing puff pastry, and she said, "Will you question this, Judith?" And she said, "Well, you go and stand in front of my marble, and I'll bring the dough." And if you've ever made puff pastry, you know what you're doing. The icy little cubes of butter that you smear in, but they shouldn't melt. It's a challenge.
Okay, okay. So I think we have about a minute left. What are you hoping people will get from this book, or take from this book?
Well, I think that I hope that they'll be stimulated to try all kinds of things and to be freer, and we're scaredy cats. Why are we afraid of failure, even for me and my dog?
But I guess the message is to experiment.
To experiment and enjoy, and not apologize, and learn to fix. You can fix almost anything.
Do it better the next time.
Yep.
Well, the book is a lot of fun, and I want to thank you for being here today. What's for dinner tonight?
Well, I had some meat left off, some cooked lamb chops, and I had some beans that I felt shouldn't be around any longer. And so it's a sort of a casserole.
Okay.
The French would call it cassoulet.
Cassoulet. Sounds great. Ah, Mabon, what a life you lead. What a dog's life. Ah. We're out of time. I want to thank Judith Jones for joining me today. Love Me, Feed Me, Sharing with Your Dog, the Everyday Good Food You Cook and Enjoy, has just been published by Alfred A. Knopf. For the City University of New York and One to One, I'm Cheryl McCarthy. If there are any people you'd like to hear from or topics you'd like us to explore, please let us know. You can write to me at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016, or you can go to the website at cuny.tv and click on Contact Us. I look forward to hearing from you.